OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
It's bang on 7:30 this Wednesday morning. It's Gilroy and Tommy Rooney with you all the way through until 10 a.m. this morning. Owen is making his way down to Limerick and Cork to sample a bit of pre-match atmosphere ahead of the All-Ireland Hurling final. We'll talk about that with James Skehill a little bit later on as well. So if you want your Hurling final fix, if you want to start ramping up your attention towards Sunday, then this is the best place to be. We'll also continue to reflect on the incredible fallout from the match at the weekend and what it means for Mayo, what it means for Kerry, what it means for Tyrone. No one's given Tyrone any chance. If you've got a view on this or indeed anything else in the world of sport, we'd love to hear from you this morning. 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. You can always get us on the YouTube comments, youtube.com/offtheball. And the best place to listen to us these days and to go about your life as a radio show, you just get us on the app and click on the OTB Sports Radio button, or tell your Alexa or Google Home or whatever fancy speaker you have to play OTB Sports Radio on TuneIn, and away you go. Tommy Rooney, good morning to you. Tommy morning. That's what we're going to start calling you.
Right. Good morning to you. How you doing? How are you?
Are you Tommy Goals? Is that what is your official Gaelic football nickname?
I've never been given a nickname on a Gaelic football field, unfortunately. I am. I used to be decent at getting a jammy goal here or there, getting an old toe on a goal, but not for a long time. It's been a while since I scored a goal. There was
controversy that Tommy Goals isn't the original Tommy Goals, and so therefore he wasn't entitled to be called Tommy Goals. But there's a period of time where the new nickname sticks on the new kid, and then he's the original actually in the public's mind after that. I don't know.
Absolutely. Andy Moran's explained it on the podcast a few times who the real Tommy Goals is, and I can't actually remember exactly who he is. He's from a different club in Mayo. He actually was on the Mayo panel, I think, 15 years ago. But Tommy Conroy, should we be renaming him? He became a man at the weekend. 69 minutes into that game, nothing was going right for him. He stands up, he takes on a couple of Dublin defenders, and he kicks a monster of a point. And then in the start of extra time, he kicks a very similar score. They were the most Mayo of points, complete percentage shots. Shouldn't have gone over the bar. But the final point in that game, Ger, where Conroy takes on 3 or 4 dubs and he buries the hole through the middle of them and he taps it over the bar to put them ahead. I think that's to put them ahead for the first time in the game, 5 minutes into injury time or extra time. That point for me summed up why there's something different about this Mayo generation. Tommy Conroy was whipped off early on in that All-Ireland final last year, and he went away, he worked on himself, he beefed up, he got a bit stronger, and it paid off.
Let me hold you there, right? Picture a scenario where when the 3 dubs have the ball deep into, is it 5 minutes, 4.5 minutes into stoppage time. Picture a scenario where a halfback appears for it and gets possession and then gets turned and then they transition up the field. What are you saying about Tommy and the rest of those young players? You're saying, that's good. They put it up to the dubs, but sure, the dubs are one of the greatest teams of all time. My concern is this, and it's just by way of calming the jets, is that what we saw was a story written on the day. And if you think back to the All-Ireland semi-final that we talked about with David Brady and Paul Caffrey last week, at the end of that game, everybody was saying, this is a Mayo team fully forged after that All-Ireland semi-final. They've come from miles behind. They were men today. They've grown into a team full of men. And then they went out and got absolutely annihilated in the final. I just think that it's a different scenario. It's a different manager. It's his second time around. He's been building for something for years. The game has moved on. I get all that. But I'm just not writing off the potential outcome that Kerry are 10 points up at half time and it's game over.
Yeah, look, I think you're on to, there's something, you're hitting on something there that could be very true, but there's such fine lines in sport. There really is. You're so right. If Merchant is still on the pitch, we'll say, at the end of that match, the ball gets slipped to him and he takes off at 100 miles an hour, and James Carr and Conor O'Shea do not force one of the greatest turnovers in the history of Gaelic football. That scene is going to be played on repeat for years to come. It was a remarkable passage of play. Where the hell are the rest of the dubs? That's what I was asking. Where are they? They're hiding because James McCarthy's been turned over 2 or 3 times. Kieran Kilkenny's been turned over 2 or 3 times. They wilted. Manny's a team would do, but the greatest team of all time probably shouldn't do. So, it's absolutely fine lines about Mayo, but we're talking about this Kerry team. They could very easily be another generational team that we've seen, but they haven't proven it yet, Ger. They really haven't. And I think that could get at Kerry a little bit, because they've been planning and prepping to get another crack at the Dubs ever since that 2019 All-Ireland final replay. They've been trying to get ready for it. They took their eye off the ball slightly and they got stung in 2020. And in 2021, everything has been going so well for Kerry. They look unbelievable. But what have they come up against? The only real challenge they had was against Clare. Clare kept them scoreless, not scoreless, maybe to a point for about 50 minutes in that game, a couple of points. But Clare couldn't get any scores on the scoreboard. And I just think there's something slightly different about this new generation of Mayo footballers. There was very few scars in that football pitch at the end. And any scars that were there have now been healed. Robbie Hennelly, Lee Keegan, Kevin McLaughlin, they all played an unbelievable role in that game.
Those scars, those scars are not healed until they win the All-Ireland. That's the thing. Like, it's just, we've seen the movie where the team celebrates the amazing semi-final victory and then for whatever reason doesn't perform in the final. And I don't want to in any way. I mean, it's Wednesday now, so presumably the celebrations are dying down. And
you'd imagine they are, yeah.
I buy that semi-final victory will stand the test of time, because nobody remembers who won semi-finals. That's actually nonsense. We all remember the smash and grab that Donegal precipitated on Dublin, because it was the last time they got beaten. But we still remember
100%.
that. I think I would argue that more people remember that game than remember the horrific goalkeeping error that gives the ball to Donaghy and wins the game for Kerry in the All-Ireland final. Obviously, if you're a Kerry fan, you remember that. But the rest of the country, I think, remembers the absolute seismic shock of Donegal beating the Dubs that day and the quality of the performance that they put in. I think this game will stand the test of time too. But, I don't think those scars will heal. What will the scars be like if they lose the final? They'll be like all-time great scars.
There was definitely demons buried, though, at the weekend. There was definitely so many missed opportunities against the Dubs that over 5, 6, 7 years that were buried. So
can we just that analogy? The funeral is on. They've brought the coffin to the graveside. The holy water has been spread, and the lads whose job it is, whatever, they're the grave diggers. They're just getting ready to bury. It's not buried. It's not. It's still sitting there. There's still the ghost of you haven't won All Ireland. There's still 4 weeks of like green and red sheep, green and red cars. The saw doctors everywhere. I mean, there's still time for us to ring up the mystics and go, what's going to happen with the curse? Can you get a helicopter to make sure you're flying over there? Can you bend some spoons for us, Yuri? Like, all sorts of nonsense is going to happen in the next 4 weeks because we don't even know who the other team. I just think they should cool the jets. That's all I'm saying. Cool the jets.
Yeah, you're probably right, but I'd imagine the jets are being cooled, and I actually don't think a month in a normal time, possibly a month is a very, very long time. But it's just, I think this Mayo team, there's a bit of maturity about them. There's a bit of, we haven't been here before. I don't think they're going to get caught up in the hype the way it's happened before in Mayo, possibly. I think James Horan has done an absolutely incredible job this year of not even tempering expectations, but just managing his squad. Like, he got every last inch out of the likes of Darren Cohen and Conor O'Shea and James Carr at the weekend. And he's done that all throughout the league. He's used an unbelievable amount of players. He's used his bench really, really early as well. So I just think that there's a squad in Mayo, there's a squad of players in Mayo that, like, I just think there's something happening there. And I just think that Kerry can get into their own heads a wee bit, like they haven't done before, because they just haven't faced that in this year. And we're all talking about Kerry being like, we are favourites, and they have 2 games left.
We are.
Well, like Tyrone are Tyrone.
They are favourites. That's what the weight of money is saying. That's what the sharps, who apparently know what they're doing, that's what they're saying. I don't know. I think that it will be very interesting to see exactly how that Tyrone team shapes up after what they've been through. And again, it depends on who has been sick, how sick they've been, how quick they make a recovery, how their training has gone. Like, if the majority of players who played in the Ulster final are fit and well, like, there was certainly high energy for a good portion of that game. And it turns out Monaghan are a really brilliant team, and they've come through that test, and they've come through the other test too. So whoever stands in Mayo's way, it will be very interesting to see what happens. I guess Mayo will be outright favourites if Tyrone win the semi-final against Kerry. I can't see a situation.
I don't know. I don't think they'll be outright favourites if Tyrone win. That'd be tight. Like, if Tyrone have come through, Donegal, Monaghan, Kerry. Like, that's a lot. That's got to get serious credit for that. You know, Mayo obviously had a good second half against Galway, a good second half against Dublin, 6-time All-Ireland winners. I don't know.
Right. The football pod with Paddy and Andy wasn't renamed this week despite the...
We renamed it at the top. There was a bit of
did you?
A bit of a gag about that, but the boys aren't really buying it.
No.
They're not happy with the changes to the contract.
Right. So Andy's okay with it. He thinks that...
yeah.
It wasn't the
He
snub.
didn't think there's that in the name, you see. And maybe it's to do with the All-Ireland titles. I don't know. I don't know what it is.
Right.
This kind of sounds right.
OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning, start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. Talk to us about this week's episode, Tommy, because we want to talk about this.
Yeah, episode 15, Ger, it's out already exclusively on the OTB Sports app. It's going to be released everywhere else today, 24 hours later than it was out in the Sports app, so you can get it first there every week. This week, it's an emotional roller coaster. Like, it's like a wake on one side of me, and Andy Moran is obviously so happy at the start, but that happiness does change halfway through the podcast. I think we see him start to think about Kerry as the podcast goes on. There's a beautiful clip that we played yesterday where he gets kind of emotional about his teammate Robbie Henley and what that meant. And I suppose that's what I was talking about when I was saying burying demons. But I think what you're getting at there, that the scars aren't healed and the demons won't be buried until they win an All-Ireland title, is very, very true. So will we have a listen to this? This clip is about hurt. Whoever wants to jump in here, feel free to, because I think both of you can come at it from different angles. Paddy, after 2014 when you were beaten by Donegal, or Andy, after losing All-Ireland finals in 16 or 17 or even 13, how long does it take for the bit of hunger, the bit of fire to come back in?
From my experience, and you're hurt. It doesn't go away, really. Like, I remember playing games the following summer in 2015, and it's just under the surface there that we haven't performed. We felt we threw away in All-Ireland in 2014, and that hurts players because, like I say, you're giving your life over to this. It means a hell of a lot to you. And when you don't perform, you don't get the results you wanted, that hurts you. And it stays with you until you put it right, to be honest. Like, that winning in 2015, when we bet Kerry in the final, it was elation to a point. But I always remember, like, the overriding feeling I had was relief. We put it right. You know, we not performed in 2014, and there is hurt there for a long, long time. Right from, you're devastated. You were devastated. Andy, you know this, and that's why I know the Dublin players are feeling that right now today. And that'll stay with them. And it does, it drives you on. There's no two ways about it. And if it doesn't drive you on, and if you're not heard about it, well, then there's serious questions asked then. There, do you have the hunger and the commitment to come back? But that is it. It's a devastating loss. And I touched on it last week in a nearly a jovial manner. Like, there are more important things in life than sport. But when you're in it, there's not. There's not. So that's how hard it's going to hit those players. But that's the challenge.
But, like, from my point of view, it doesn't weigh heavy on me. It genuinely doesn't, and it never has. It's just not my personality, really. But the hurt of losing All Ireland will stay with me till the day it's over. If I'm being honest,
you can't say it doesn't hurt you, and then you're saying
no. What I'm saying is, like, I'm saying it like I wouldn't go around in my daily life thinking about it. But
yeah,
it's there somewhere. It's there somewhere.
It's there. Like, me on a personal level set out to achieve a goal that we try to do as a team and you as a person. And Paddy said, like, growing up, his thing was always to win All Irelands, and we were no different. Just because we're from Mayo, it was no different. So they would stay, like, there'd be always a few echoes in my kind of chamber there to remind me of them things. And, like, we lost them all, and the first one that really felt fatal was 17. So we lose 16, but you always think, geez, yeah, we've a couple of young fellas coming through here. The likes of Jeremy, Stephen Cohen is kicking on. We did an outrageous training. Like, we went on holiday to South Africa. We never, as a group, no management with us, never trained as hard as our lives. Like, because we knew we were going in for an assault at this again. But I remember being back in the room with my little girl and my wife, and that was the first time I really, it was fatal. And for me, that will stay with me, I think, for the rest of my life. And not in a way where there's ever bitterness or anything, but when you set out to achieve something, same in business, the same with family, the same with everything. When you set out to achieve something and you don't achieve it, it's there for everyone to see. What I love about this team, my team, I'll go through me, for example. We lost a minor to Conrad Murphy, James Masters, Cork. We lost a minor. We lost 21s to Armagh. And we lost the All-Irelands. I've lost at senior level since. So my group never got the winning, I'm not sure it's a mentality, but we never got that winning feeling. Where I feel this group is different is that the core of this group, the Stephen Combs, the Diarmuid O'Connors, the Matty Ruans, have won a minor, they've won a 21s, and they've won a National Football League in Croke Park against Kerry. And lads, Paddy, you know, after that 13 when you won it, that mentality surely means something to you. I never felt it, but I'm sure you did.
I think the big thing in the start of that brilliant decade for Dublin was that 2011 win for Dublin. It was just a huge moment. It just gives confidence, it gives vindication, it gives tangible rewards for the work you're putting in, and it just gives belief that we're good enough to do this. And like I say, you never know. You can do all the training, you can do all the preparation. Until you do it, you're never entirely sure. And that's why I think, touching on the two young guys, O'Donoghue and Conroy, the confidence they will take from it, of doing it against Dublin and Croke Park, will be the same as what Dublin, I feel, would have got from that 2011 win. And for a lot of those players, James McCarthy, Dermot Connolly, Paul Flynn, Cluxton, Keane O'Sullivan, that was a vindication that we're good enough to do this. And it just snowballed from there over the next 10 years. So Andy's right, that at some stage in your career, when you're doing all this work and you're putting all this sacrifice in, and you need, are we doing enough? And being able to get over the line and win an All-Ireland is definitely vindication. It gives huge confidence for that. And that's why Saturday's win, although it's not a final, it's a massive, massive win. Whoever was going to beat Dublin, whenever this run was going to come to an end, it was going to be a monumental victory for that group. And that's what I feel it is for Mayo. And that's what they're going to be banking on, that confidence, and that they don't need to fear Kerry in the All-Ireland final. If they've beaten the team that hasn't lost a match in 7 years, and they've dethroned the 6-time All-Ireland champions in a row, they don't need to fear anyone. They won't be favourites. There's definitely things they need to improve on from their own performance. I think in terms of their efficiency and technical skills up front. But it's a great starting point when you know, without a doubt, that your athleticism, your bravery, your balls are all there. That's a great starting point for any team. And that's why I just think it's a massive, massive win for that group.
We will see. That is great stuff from this week's edition of the Football Pod, which is still available exclusive. We're still in our 24-hour window. The best place to get it, the only place to get it at the moment, is the OTB Sports app, and it'll be in all of the rest of your podcast players a little bit later today. OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. Somebody's not quite listening to what I was saying, but Colin says, spot on, Ger. Mayo's win had more to do with Dublin's capitulation and demise as Mayo's heart. Kerry to win comfortably. Mayo have buried their ghost of Dublin, but reality will bite with Kerry. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that, like, this, we can read too much in the aftermath of one specific thing happening. Like, once they beat Kerry, then you can say the semi-final is this massive hinge point in their lives. But we've seen,
True.
you know, the recovery from the death against the Dubs in the All-Ireland semi-final didn't actually lead to Mayo winning the All-Ireland that year. That 2017 year that Andy's talking about, I just was quick, like, how did they get to the final that year? They beat Sligo and Connacht. They got beaten by Galway. Then they draw with Derry and win in extra time. Then this is in the qualifiers. Then they beat Clare by 7 points in Cusack Park and Ennis.
But they were behind. They were behind early in that game, yeah.
And before an 11,000 crowd. Then they draw with Cork and win by a point after extra time in the Gaelic grounds. 13,000 added. Then they draw with Roscommon in Croke Park. Lucky to get the draw and hammer them in the replay. Then they draw with Kerry in the All-Ireland semi-final and beat them in the replay. And then they get beaten by a point in the All-Ireland final. Oh my God.
10 games. Epic. No wonder Andy Moran was Footballer of the Year that year.
That's a 30 for 30.
It was unbelievable. It was unbelievable that year, yeah. And do you remember the passage of play at the end of the game in that year where Mayo have a full-on press on out the field, Dublin have got a point up, and Mayo are chasing. I think Kinnear O'Connor had missed a free already. They're chasing, and Johnny Cooper and Stephen Cluxon play it between themselves. It's not as close to the goal line as Comerford and Byrne were, but it's not far off it. Cooper must touch the ball 7 or 8 times in that passage of play, and Mayo just can't turn them over. That was Dublin at their absolute peak. That was Dublin when their A versus B games were better than most games, I'd say, going on around the country. And Dublin just couldn't reach those levels. I think one massive point that's worth taking from the game at the weekend, Ger, is that 8 of Mayo's 9 points in the second half came from turnovers. So they came from Dublin losing the ball or them turning Dublin over. Is that going to happen against Kerry? I'm not so sure. So something else is going to have to work for them going forward.
Right. Okay. That's the crack with the football chat. If you want to get involved, we'd love to hear from you. There's still some more. Did Mayo get lucky on Saturday? Asks Shifty Lad.
I don't think luck, if you're talking about luck, were they unlucky for the last 5 or 6? I don't think luck has that much to do with it. I think they stuck with them and they were ready to pounce. They were good enough to beat Dublin when they were there to be beaten. I don't think Meath and Kildare were.
And they got unlucky with a lot of the refereeing decisions, and then they got lucky later on when the ref was trying to make up for the bad decisions early on. So anyway, look, we'll come back to that a little bit later on in the show as well. It's 7:51 this morning. Here's what's coming up between now and 10 a.m. Daniel Harris is standing by. We're going to talk to him about the weekend's football and previewing the countdown to next weekend's. We've got the sports pages at 8:05. As I said, James Skehill going to be with us at 8:15 to analyse the All-Ireland hurling final. John Duggan at 8:35 rounding up today's sports news. Gregor Paul, we're going to go to New Zealand. It's almost exactly a year since a poll was done of the coaching talent available in New Zealand. Bottom of the pile or top of the poll, depending on who you want, was Warren Gatland. That's a year ago, so we'll see if perceptions have changed. Talking Bollocks, 9:10. It's a brilliant new podcast, and the lads have done some pretty interesting stuff over the last week. We're going to talk to them at 9:10 this morning. And then Damien Delaney is on the record last night talking about what it's like to mark Romelu Lukaku, and not much fun, essentially, was the too long didn't read version of that. But make sure you stay tuned at 9:30 and we'll bring you that as well. But at 7:52 this morning, Daniel Harris, good morning to you. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, pretty good. It was about as interesting and entertaining an opening weekend of football as we could have hoped for. A lot of stuff that was stereotypical, big teams beating small teams happened, and then thankfully some really big teams didn't perform the way we expected them to. So that's always good.
Yeah, it was a great weekend, and I think that we could probably have predicted that, because what we've got is we've got more good teams than we've had in a long time. If any team that wins the league this season will deserve it, because you would think that there will be at least 2 of them that can sustain a challenge. But what you've also got is you've got the teams lower down the league that are able to hang on to their players and improve rather than constantly be fighting when they have their best players taken from them.
That helps, right? For us as people who want to watch good football.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm still slightly concerned that it's going to take a really significant points tally to win the league this season, because the better teams just have so many options. But you have a lot of teams that are able to beat any of the good teams on a good day. And what you want is, I think this is one of the things that has sustained English football. There's all this notion that English football is the most competitive. But if you look at it over the course of the decades, there's usually a dominant team or 2 dominant teams. But what you get on a week-to-week basis is you're not sure how it's going to go. And it's that week-to-week basis, because obviously you had Liverpool won everything for in the 70s and 80s, more or less. Man United won the 90s and the, don't know, what do we call the decade that come after the 90s? I don't think the aughts is really tolerable, is it? But whatever it's called. And then now you've got Manchester City dominating now. So you can look and say, well, you usually could guess who's going to win the league at the beginning of the season. But what you get is you get surprise league winners every now and again, but also you're not sure who might beat who every Saturday, and it's that jeopardy that is what sustains English football, and one of the main reasons I think why English football is the game that is dominating the world at the moment.
I saw somebody making the conclusion or drawing the impression that we saw more successful dribbles last weekend from a bunch of players than we would have seen from almost all of last season, because every time a player completed a successful dribble, the crowd went wild and they were like, well, I'm going to do that again because I really enjoy that. And look, I don't know if it's cause and effect and if we massively overread into the first day of the season, but I think it's going to be very interesting to see what impact fans back in the stadiums have, particularly on those middle tier and those lower tier teams. Whereas last year they might have tried something slightly outrageous, knowing that actually, there's no repercussions for this. But if you're a Villa player or a Norwich player or one of those players who suddenly has the crowd on your back are you going to be as brave as you were last season when you were already 2-0 down? I'm not sure.
I think that it can work up different ways depending on different personalities. I'm absolutely certain there were players who really sort of enjoyed lockdown football, pandemic football, because they're players who don't feed off the crowd. And there are other teams. The most obvious example is Liverpool, who went from not losing a game at Anfield for 73 years to losing 73 times last season. And it's easy to say, well, the great Anfield crowd and all that kind of nonsense. And it isn't that. It's just that certain styles of play require a lot of energy. And to get that energy and to get that additional adrenaline that makes you run harder and faster than your opponents, knowing that there's a crowd there can be helpful. And similarly, I imagine the lack of a crowd bothered Man City the least. And again, this isn't because Man City have got no fans and yet it's quiet. That's not what I'm saying. It's just that they play quite a composed, bloodless style of football. And for that kind of game, I don't think that the adrenaline that the crowd give you is particularly significant. I hope that we see more teams who are lower down the league winning more home games against teams who are higher up the league. I think that is also significant, not just in influencing the players, but probably in influencing the referees as well. And now the referees have a little bit more discretion to interpret the laws as they see fit rather than have them interpreted for them. I think, again, we might see, and I hope that we do see, more surprise results because you've got that additional factor of the crowd. And then what you were talking about in terms of dribbles, I remember someone saying, can't remember who it was, that in English football, people, in whichever football they came from, I think it may have been Spanish football, people cheer a goal or a nice pass. In English football, people cheer a tackle. And I'm hoping that we'll also see more tackles, particularly, again, as there's a bit more leeway to interpret the laws of the game now for the referees. And what it sort of reminded me of was the group stages of the Brazil World Cup. And you're probably sitting there thinking, what is this idiot on about now? But the group stages of the Brazil World Cup were great. And I think one of the reasons they were great is that no one wanted to go to Brazil, the home of Jogo Bonito, and embarrass themselves by playing crap football. And so teams went and they committed to attack, and we saw a lot of good games, a lot of unexpectedly good games. And I think, and I hope that that's what's going to be the case now, that teams haven't played in front of their fans for a year. Do they really want to shame, antagonise and bore their fans? Or do they want to put it all on the line and give their fans everything that they've been missing? And while they themselves as players are kind of consumed by what it must take. Often you watch football matches and I kind of think, I've no idea how these players cope with this. If I was playing professional football, I'd be spending half the time just crying and laughing at my good fortune and trying to handle the buzz of it. But players have that ability to convert the potential of the crowd, that energy that could go either way, into something positive and challenging. And the presence of the crowds now, having not had them, I think is gonna do that, and we're gonna see much better football as a consequence. The football we'll see this season will be 1,000,000 times better than the kind of masquerade we saw last season.
Yeah, hopefully. I do want to ask you a little bit about the United performance at the weekend. Is this what we should expect in terms of the Pogba level of ability, or is that something that comes up specifically when you get the opportunity to play against a lead side who didn't have Phillips and maybe are, I don't know, having a slow start or something? What explains Pogba's performance at the weekend?
You might think, if anything, that Leeds would be a difficult opponent for Pogba because they go man to man, so someone's going to be on his arse all the time, and it's going to be a hard physical game at a time when you wouldn't expect Pogba to be fit. And Pogba looks really strong and really fit, so no, I wouldn't expect 4 assists from him every week. But if you've got the rest of the team working, then you can afford to allow Pogba to go and do damage, particularly if it's a team who are coming to attack. So you're not looking to guard against the counter quite as much because they're already pushing forward in the first place. I think that if you remember the way United started last season, which was terrible, and they just looked not fit, I think this season it's a little bit different because, I don't know, when they're on half term, and Ole said, when he was asked about how the players were going to come back, he said that the players have been given instructions and been told what to do, and he didn't know whether or not they were going to do those things, but until they came back, but they've been told. And I'm extrapolating here, But I guess when they were told, they probably weren't told in those terms, because for the first time since Fergie, there's competition for places at United. If you turn up and you're not fit from your holidays and everyone else is fit, you won't play. And that's going to continue to be the case. United now have enough options to leave out any player that they want if that player's not performing, or if that player isn't doing what the managers and the manager and the coaches are asking. And Pogba is just as much one of those players that he's got to fight for his place in the team. And whatever people say about Pogba, he loves playing football. I mean, he plays football when he's not meant to be playing football. I think the difference with Pogba is sometimes that his intensity is not where it needs to be for the level of competition at which he's playing. But now, if that's the case, he just won't play. And particularly if he's already committed to leaving, then there's a further excuse to leave him out. So if he decides that he doesn't want to put it in, then he won't. Then we won't see as much of him. And I think that United now are playing with a certain level of confidence and authority that you didn't see them play with last season, particularly if you look at Harry Maguire and Luke Shaw.
Yeah.
And it's a weird thing to say that I think Scott McTominay also, that players who've had massive disappointments, I think have come back with increased confidence, because Scott McTominay now knows that he can go and play in a European final and be the best player on the pitch. He was the best player on the pitch against Villarreal by far. And the fact that United didn't win was nothing to do with him whatsoever, and it was him that actually forced the equalising goal.
Okay,
and he'll have come back.
It's interesting you bring him up, right? Because there was a big question last year about the need to play the two defensive central midfielders because the confidence in the centre backs wasn't that high. Does the arrival of Varane, and assuming he gets into the team sooner rather than later, does that mean that they don't need to play Fred and McTominay anymore? Or is actually what they're going to do, play Fred and McTominay, and then that gives you the freedom to have Pogba in your side, and all of a sudden you're incredibly difficult to score against, but you do have that array of attacking talent that actually on balance you're going to be in and win more games, especially more of the big games?
I don't know. I think it will be case-by-case basis. I had a problem with the way Ole was doing it last season because he was moving Rashford to the right where he was less effective and playing Pogba on the left, and that meant that Greenwood couldn't play. And I think we saw it the weekend. I mean, we saw it last season as well, that Greenwood is now just too good to leave out. He should have, I mean, he started the Europa League final possibly because of injury, but he should have started it anyway. As far as I'm concerned, he gets in United's best team. Doesn't, like, wherever it happens to be, he is now much too good to leave out. And what happens with the rest of it, I think probably depends on the opponent. But you're right in what you say about the fact that they've now got Varane in the defence. It means they can play a bit higher, and it means they've got some more recovery pace, and they've got someone who's a great one-on-one defender. So that should enable them to play one holding midfield player. I mean, I thought they should have done that anyway. But it's not just Varane, it's the fact that Maguire and Luke Shaw have gone to a tournament and they've been arguably the best players in their position at that tournament. And it now feels like they have a bottom level that they're confident they can hit every time. So that a lot of the time they're playing almost like Shaw in particular, looks like he's playing not off memory, but he's just so comfortable in his ability to give a 7 out of 10 that he can do that without really putting it in. But they're playing with that additional authority that you see the way that Maguire's now bringing the ball forward. He wasn't, and the way that he's now hitting long passes. He's always been able to do that, but he wasn't doing that as much last season as he did it for England and as he did it in that game for United. So I think that they do have a lot of options. I don't think that when everyone's fit, I would be wanting to see Pogba on the left wing, although I can totally see why you would play him there, because you're trying to get him in the team. Because one of the things you get with Pogba is you also get that additional physical presence. You get someone, and I think that when he was at his best and when he had that good run last season, that was one of the most impressive things. It wasn't just the passing and the goals and the assists and the skill. It was the fact that he was a good defensive presence at corners, and he would be winning second balls, and he would be able to shield the ball because physically he's able to do that. And United don't have that many players in that team who are able to do that. But as far as the defensive midfield player goes, I think that, McTominay is a much better player than Fred. Okay, so to summarise, it's not that there is a specific best 11 that will always be the best 11 under every circumstance. It's that they now have options, and depending on what game plan you're trying to inflict on your opponent, then there might be a case for the two central defensive midfielders to play, and there will be cases where only one of them will play, and in that instance you would prefer to see McTominay. Is that a fair summation of what you're saying? Yeah, I think so. But what you've also got is you've got a team that now can play in quite a fluid manner. So what you see McTominay and Fred running in front, running ahead of the strikers, you give Pogba a free role, and the only way you can do that is if everyone knows their job. And I said last week that United had looked really sharp in pre-season, and they were going to be, whether they or not they win the thing is unclear, obviously, but they're going to hand out some absolute hidings. And the reason they're able to do that is because they have a lot of players, and the longer they play with each other, the more they know what they do. And people have been saying, well, these coaches don't know what they're talking about. Are they going to Solskjaer as a PE teacher? United they're managing to win games because eventually some of their good players will either combine to do something or there'll be a piece of individual brilliance. But I think what you're seeing now is you're seeing the understanding that you get from players that have played together for a couple of seasons, are being given clear instructions about what they want to do, and they're now confident enough and good enough to